Jackie. How's everybody doing? It's good to see you all here. Hello to Hive. Hi, Jan. Hi, Kyle. I will make a note here as we're starting out. If you're watching later on YouTube, this is our initial knee-jerk reaction. Please make sure if you're watching on YouTube, you hit the subscribe button and also like and share and all that other stuff. And drop a comment because I'd love to read your comments and reply. Okay. So this is Angela from Queen Bee's Outlandish Hive, and we're talking to this episode 806. Oh my God, just 4 more episodes, you guys. I can't even stand it. But all the heavy hitters are coming, boy. So this is going to be good. But this is episode 806. We're now on the coasting out part, and it's called Blessed Are the Merciful, written by Danielle Berrow, directed by Neil McCormick, and the synopsis said that the Frasers and Mackenzies recover after their respective battles and consider their next steps. Ian and Rachael meet someone who they hope can help them find Emily. Donna says Danielle Berrow is like a nice Snoopy security blanket. I love that expression. I love that. So, general episode thoughts. I am going to give this one a 4.8. Really, I could go a little higher, but I'm going to go 4.8 until I do my deeper dive. It was probably the slowest and most patient of the season, but it was very beautiful. It was very heartfelt. It had a lot of strong heartbeat moments, but it also does a lot of heavy lifting. In spite of it seeming more sleepy, it's actually doing quite a bit in this episode, which is great if you can write an episode to not feel like you're going all over the place and doing a lot of stuff, but it still feels just natural and just kind of like rolling down the river, rolling down that little river with the Mohawks, and we're kind of getting all these little things taken care of. I thought it was great. We got a great sex scene, I thought. I've seen people complain about that. I'm going to talk about that. I thought it was the best one we've gotten yet all season. And one of the best in a while, I think, because, to be honest, Claire and Jamie have gotten really boring. Maybe it's because she's married, but just bleh, And I feel like there was at least a little bit of passion happening here, you know what I mean? So I like that. Martina says, I love this episode so much. I think after all this is over, I will reread book 9 and appreciate it much more. I think you're right about that because the book Bees was a little meandery, and this makes some of that feel a little more tightened in to get the main gist of what's happening at different moments. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, it was a little slower and more peaceful than last week was or next week will be. So I think you need that breather in between to kind of have some heart moments and more character development and more relational development and things like that in between 2 intense episodes. And we know next week's going to be intense. If you don't think next week is going to be intense, think again. It will be. If it's a Tony episode, it's going to be jam-packed. It's going to have woo-woo. It's going to have reveals. It's going to have the fire. People are going to die. Here it's everything you kind of feel smiles after everything. Even the thing with even William and all getting into the fight ends with smiles with Denny and that whole bit of the scene. You know what I mean? So everything kind of made you feel good by the end of it. And that you need that. You need that. You can't take 3 overly intense episodes in a row, which is too much. You start to feel like, okay, I got to get a breath. Give me a breath, please. Danielle is a little bit about her in case you don't really know much about her. She's the historian of the writer's room. She's the one that did the whole thing on Bomb of the women with the birthing situation of that custom because she did all this research into the history of that. She likes to bring in little custom elements and stuff into her episodes, but she's also a big lover of the books. She was a big fan of Diana's before she ever came into the writer's room. So she does tend to really try to keep the spirit as much as she can and as much of the dialogue in the books that she can present in the story. So you can always count, if you're a book reader, Usually you'll feel good with a Danielle Berrow episode. She's not trying to step all up. Well, she gets creative, but she doesn't like want to change the heart and spirit of what happened in the book. But she does adapt things well. So I really think she is a really great writer in as far as there's always like things to kind of look deeper at and see the way she uses different elements in her episodes, very symbolic things, and things are all put together in like a bow a lot of times with her episodes. Tony will tear our guts out. I got some thoughts on the whole episode next week as well, but we'll get into that. I think that the writers this season so far, we're like 6 episodes in. I kind of feel like I got a firm grasp on the way they're structuring the season a little bit. And I think they're just doing such a great job condensing not just bees, but some of Echo, some of Moby, and bees. And then however they're going to end, that's not in bees at the very end. They're doing such a brilliant job because you're talking about probably between everything they're covering, like 1,200 pages of material and multiple books. And they're managing to condense that, keep the heart of the story there and all of the storylines. It feels almost the truest to the books and to the spirit of what the books are saying. So I've really been very happy. I think if you're a book fan and you're complaining a lot about this episode, or not just this episode, the season, I really don't feel like it's warranted. I think you're being too picky if you are, because I just feel like it's been so much from the books. I think because they don't have a lot of room to work, they don't have like a lot of space to do a lot of extra stuff. So they're just trying, I think, to give the fans as much as they can woven in from the books for this last season to kind of give them a gift. And I feel like that's what's happening. It's amazing, really, how well they've broken down and adapted things so far. I've been very impressed. We have 4 main storylines in this episode, and most of it came straight from the books. Some had a little bit of tweaking to make it work for the show, especially in the Ian and Rachael storyline, because we've lost so much out of that storyline that they had to make what's remaining into a more cohesive, intense, and arc type of story that had some tension moments in it and all that. So there was a little bit of tweaking, but pretty much the end result is the same. You know what I mean? Like, we get Totus back with us, we get the little dog, we get Emily naming the baby, and all of that. We see her kind of little bit of angst going through, how's this going to be? How's he going to react? And all that stuff. It was a little more angsty than in the book, but in the book, a lot of her angst was calmed by Jenny. Jenny was kind of like the buffer of all of that. And also a lot of the angst of that storyline went to Sylvia's story, like that intense jealousy and that reveals and all of that insecure feeling. And Rachael was pretty much trying to like be helpful to her instead of having to go through it herself. So all of that had to be treated in just this one story. So they kind of needed to tweak a few things, and I get it. These are your 4 main storylines. You have the whole Rachael Ian traveling the Shadow Lake, all that storyline. We have William, Ben, and Amaranthus and Denny and that whole storyline. We have Roger and Bray, that whole storyline, and then we have the Ridge and that whole storyline. So that we have 4 storylines, but they managed to keep the themes that are in this episode consistent all through all 4 storylines. So they felt even though they were separated, very distinct, they all felt cohesive because they had similar thematic elements going through all the episodes. So I thought that was really done well. Let's see. William learns about that Amaranthus was behind the thing with Ben. So any thought that they weren't going to do it that way, or maybe they were making her better in the book or in the show and not showing her being as treacherous, and that's all to me now killed, because it came right out in that thing, just like in the book, was her idea. So on that, we also definitely through Ben get the confirmation that yes, she isn't just lying about being married to him and his baby and all that stuff, just in case anybody still thought that. We had the common thread between Rachael and the wives of the Ridge appealing to a chief to get like mercy given to them. So with the wives, it was the chief of Jamie with Rachael in this, it was the chief of Joseph Brant, and had a parallel situation there to kind of seen those stories together. We had, I thought Roger really shined in this episode. It felt very authentic, Roger. I think one of the best Brie and Roger scenes that I've seen in a while, where Roger really feels this is a very important episode for that. This is very crux to his arc. All the cast is just doing stellar standout performances. They're all giving it their all, which I really love. The title, Blessed Are the Merciful. We have two common thematic through lines in all four storylines. Okay. We have the idea of showing mercy. Okay. And that idea was all through. And we also get the idea of female wisdom and worth, and women stepping out of their comfort zone to accomplish things that they normally wouldn't have the agency to do. We see the parallel idea, as I said, of making an appeal to the chief. We see the idea of the female influence on men. Also, all of that is packaged together. We see it with Brie. We see it with Mrs. Crombie. We see it with, and all the rest of the women. Catherine, Joseph Brandt's wife. Rachael, Emily, and even Pigweed in the William and Ben story, because of the influence she had on Ben to make that whole thing happen. You know what I mean? So it's showing her, even though it's not necessarily in a positive way, it's still showing that in the story. So you see that in all four. You see the mercy thing in all four. So that to me makes this, where somebody might feel like it went all over. It didn't really go all over because those thematic elements helped it glue together. Do you know what I mean? So I feel that was really well written and adapted to get all these pieces in that feel so different working together. The other thing I liked about it, with this whole female empowerment and wisdom and worth and all that stuff, is they found a way to communicate that idea of the female. The quote we used to always get aggravated with, the strong woman trope. But they found a way to do that in this episode without it being overbearing with it, especially with Claire. Claire just with the side smile, with the, don't you worry a little about the, like her talking to him, not saying, you can't do that with them to the women, like old Claire used to do. We don't have the women just telling everybody off, to kind of show them blooming a little bit, and in the Mohawk world, they really relied on women. They see women as a completely different thing, which we know. So it made sense definitely over there as well. So I really like that as well. There's a little bit of gentle persuasion, a little bit of support, a little bit of the women. But one of the things I loved is when he went in to give them the new tenant things and give him his new terms, all the men were in the front and the women were hanging in the back because they're supposed to be the subservient ones, And he says, step forward, ladies. And all of a sudden they moved forward and the men were back. And I thought that was such a great visual way to lay out that scene, to kind of show that visually. So I thought that was great too. They continue with the idea of circle of life, legacy, family ties, with a lot of these different, every single story practically, especially the ones with Ian and Rachael, Roger and Brie, and William and Ben. So you got a lot of that idea of legacy and what your mark you're going to leave on the world. And lastly, the title card was Totus and Rollo III running through a field playing. So Veronica, we were talking about the sunset. I think it was for the title card, the sunset drink of Sam's for this episode. That title card was this gorgeous sunset as Totus and the dog are running through the fields. It was a beautiful shot, but I think that was where the sunset thing came through. And also the other thing about sunset, as well as all of the shots by the river with the symbolic visual of the transition, especially for Rachael and Ian, because they're about to have a shift here with taking on this kid and getting a new dog, and him having closure with Emily and all this type of stuff. Rachael to realize her place in Ian's life when she wasn't sure. So there was all of this kind of element in there with this river running through the back of it. And it was beautiful, because that river kind of symbolizes all of Ian's transitions all along. He's had this life of transitional movement between from the Highlands, getting taken by pirates to come into America, to then being traded out to the Mohawk, become a Mohawk, then coming back, then getting married to Rachael. So he's had this long-standing arc that's going as well. So you're kind of getting that idea by walking by the river. And the other thing with the sunset card, the sunset is also considered one of the times of power because it's in between day and night. So, like, big things, miraculous things, transitional things happen, powerful things happen at sunset, by the river's edge, all these different things. So you're getting all of this powerful symbolism, I think, through the episode as well. Now, before I get to director and writer, let me look at the board. Priscilla says, Amaranthus is an opportunist, wants prestige of Ben's title and money. I know. I'm so glad that went the way it was in the book. And then I have a Diana deed about it too, which makes me feel even more confident that we're not going to end up with William and Amaranthus together in the books and in the way they're doing it in the show. I feel like, okay, maybe I won't have to turn around and like this girl. So happy we're in sync on Amaranthus. I know I can't get with all these people that want to just go, oh, I really want, I think it's that they want William with somebody by the end. And so Amaranthus is like, they're not going to be able to invest him in someone new. So that's, I think, where it's coming from, maybe. But I want him with somebody I feel isn't going to be using him. I feel with Amaranthus, she's a gold digger. She's proven herself that as soon as Ben was jeopardizing his title, she pushed away to keep it, and then left him, abandoned him basically, instead of sticking with him. I really resent her for that. You didn't see Claire do that. You didn't see any of these women do that in these books. They always go to the end for their man, they don't just walk when they're not marching to the beat of their tune. So I get annoyed with this whole, like, everybody wants to capitulate to this woman. Like, what has she done to deserve that? But anyway, I digress. Jane says she loves that they brought back Nicosis as swiftest of lizards. Vicky says season so far is so good, very close to the books, and this ep was so beautiful and emotional. The actors did such an awesome job. I love their conversation so much, but I thought we could do with a shorter fade to black love scene. And I love them, but I think that was a bit too long. I didn't. I loved it. Loved it. Loved it. It might be the only really good sex scene we have this whole season from the way it's appearing. But I'm going to talk about that because some people really had an attitude about, we didn't need that. Why would they do that? It didn't seem to go with after the. I'm like, yes, it did. Did you read the book? Like, she actually talks about, it fades to black in the book. We don't see the scene, but you get the impression in the book that's where she's going next. When she says, send me at the end, she says, I'm the only one that can give him what he needs in this moment, meaning, like, just a completion of himself, a feeling of being alive, which everybody going through a battle in the whole history of these books, okay, comes back, and the whole thing is after a battle, you have a cock stand and all this other stuff. That's always a thing that when they come back, they need to reassert their life again, and with having sex. Didn't seem odd to me at all. And that was alluded to in the book, that's what she meant. So I don't know why everybody's getting up in arms about it. I felt fine with it, and I appreciated the scene. Even though it was still a straddly sex scene, it was still erotic in the way that it was done, and I appreciated that. I don't know why people didn't. Or I think some people just don't want to see Roger and Bree sex scenes, because they really just care about Jamie and Claire sex scenes, and they've been bashing that ever since it started practically. And I can't get behind that because I think they have a very erotic way that they do their sex. It has a little bit of kink, has a little bit of eroticism, and I thought this one was one of their best that they've done. So I really liked it. Maybe I'm all alone on it, but I really liked it. And I think it fit with just coming out of this battle, just having this life-affirming thing that he has understood happened, that, not only is he lucky to be alive coming out of the battle, but after this realization that he really should have been dead, and he saved himself and all this. And and this understanding of his purpose and all. And then like letting Bree know you still mean everything to me. Like all of this stuff I'm going through, I still worship you. And I thought it was beautiful, you know? So I loved it. Women are the backbone of the era, Diane says. Veronica says, of course, they got criticized for making Claire too quiet. I saw that with Reshma. I don't agree with her on that at all. But she's a very feminist writer. She's very much about the feminism to the point that it's all about, like, she's the star of the show and everything should be about her. She really chants that. And, you know, a lot of us don't really go for that. Neither does Diana. So I don't pay attention to those people. Kim says, I personally did not like their love scene and it did not feel necessary to be so lengthy. I know they need to conceive Davy, but I did not enjoy it. Agree with Angela that the J and C sex scenes are too flat. So let's move on from sex scenes. I love the sex scenes. Call me a perv. But I mean, I get it. You know, some people don't. I do, though. I thought that was really nice. I thought it was beautiful and I enjoyed it. So, and I think probably it's probably going to be the last you get of really, definitely from them. And we might get one thing maybe from Jamie and Claire. So I like that we at least get one really nice scene with somebody because it doesn't feel like Outlander if you don't have sex. Like that's part of the DNA, you know? Not that you do it gratuitously. I didn't feel it was gratuitous because I felt it fit in that time after a battle, after this moment that he's bearing his soul to her. I thought it fit to kind of seal it physically like that. And I felt like Roger was so filled with emotion with all this different things from the thing you just went through with all of this realization. And I felt like he wanted to share this and kind of celebrate it in a sense or commemorate it almost with his love with his wife. So I thought it was beautiful. I liked it. Claire seems diminished in her authority and power lately, like she's tired or afraid. No, I think she's just older now. She's wiser now. She doesn't need to like be overbearing all the time, and I appreciate that about her. I'm not one that like overbearing Claire, like Claire of season 2 and 3 and 4. Like she came off too like Jamie got minimized a lot. And you never felt that way in this, even though like the women were pushing buttons left and right. Jamie still held his own in this episode, and I thought, you know, I liked the way he dealt with the men. I liked you could see his battle between trying to be hard and tough and hold his lines, but the actual compassion that he has, it's almost like this two sides of Jamie that are getting shown in that episode, a kind of a battle with one another almost. But then he finds like a compromise that he can live with, but also is showing compassion to the family. So I thought that was really good. Let's see. Oh, Donna, I'm so glad. Donna says, I guess I'm in the minority, but I loved Roger and Bree Rumpy Pumpy scene. I guess I'm starved for love at the moment. Oh, Donna, see, this is why we're both Italian, feisty, hot-blooded Italian women. See, we get it. We get it. This is why me and you, we're like this. Patty says Hiram Crombie was devastated with the loss of the trading post and he deserved everything. I agree. Like that was hitting him right where it hurt, you know, because here he did all this because he was sucking up to the money man. But in the end, you know, you should have sucked up with the chief because he may have the money to build the thing, but he didn't have the land to be able to have that say. And bottom line, land counts in it. You know, what you put on the land can be broken down, can be given away, but the land is the land, and that's Jamie's. So I really love that too. Diane says, did anyone notice Bree's left hand? It looked like her finger was very swollen. Okay, now I've been debating whether to tell you guys this. I was debating telling you guys this because I thought I really love the Bree and Roger scene, but since you don't like the sex anyway, maybe you won't care. But there's something that I noticed in the sex scene that a little bit threw me out because now that I noticed it, I can't unsee it. Does anybody know what I'm talking about on that? I would have really hated a William and Anne Marie this relationship. Well, I don't know what Diane is doing, but I'm getting more of the impression from a comment that she made that I'm going to give you when I get to that part of the story that I don't think she's going that direction, thank God. Vicky says, I still say that William's happy ending is going to be his bonding with Jamie and his family. I like that. In the book, it almost looks like William ends up with Fanny. Am I wrong in thinking this? That's actually what I'm hoping for, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But that's what I was pulling for, unless a new person comes in over this book. I mean, we got a whole book left. There could be a whole new person coming in that we haven't met yet. So we don't know. But, and plus time that goes by. I'm not sure how much time is going to go by in the 10th book. Is anyone wondering what song she'll choose? I don't know if it's possible to top. Did you hear they're going to have a song, Mary? Let me know, because I didn't hear that. But I have heard that there's going to be something musical in the season. Did Amaranthus and William go all the way in the gazebo? I still don't know. I've talked to Jeff about it too. And Jeff thought no, but then I had him kind of second guessing it. So I don't know. It's a mystery. Although I said to Tom when we were watching this episode, I said, I forgot all about that little flappy pants in the front that is very easy access. I was thinking britches didn't come down, you didn't peel off stuff. But I don't know if his pants are like that. I don't think his pants were like that. I think they were regular pull-up pants. But Roger had the little flappy down in the front pants. That would be very easy to just kind of whip it out, whip it back in without us really seeing it. So I don't know now. It depends if he had this kind of pants. I guess that makes it easier. Bear flare again. The bear flare all season has been great, Martina. Our kinky QB. Hey, what do they say? I'm in my 50s, late 50s, but still, Hey, if you have a problem with sex and you're an Outlander fan, you should have been out of it a long time ago. You know what I mean? If you had a problem with sex, either books or show, you don't want to see that or hear about it or whatever, this isn't the show for you or the books for you. You know what I mean? We can say we're in the room where it happened. And it was beautiful sex. Oh, Lori, thank you. Another person, another soulmate in my sex love. I really did. I really liked it, and I thought it was fitting. People were acting like it was gratuitous, and what did it mean for the scene? I thought it mattered. It very much mattered for the scene because they always talk about sex after battle anyway, just for that alone. But then all the other stuff piled into it. I felt like it was her saying, "I'm with you in this," and her kind of completing his understanding of her accepting everything he said and her doing that. And that was in the book. Like I said, I'm going to read the thing to you so you can see what I'm talking about. But anyway, feel like she's actually more powerful. I agree, Veronica. She's talking about Claire, and she said, I feel she is actually more powerful. She doesn't need to yell and stomp and get people to do what she needs them to do. You knew she was behind Jamie's change, or at least she influenced it. I'm not going to say she was behind it totally, because I think that diminishes Jamie in it, but I think she was the influence in it, gentle influence, we could do this, or here's an idea. What do you think? She's a little more like that. And I think that was the point, to show the idea men should listen to their wives, the idea that, sometimes she might have something smart to bring to the table and you should at least hear what she has to say. But if the woman turns around and says it you're going to do this, and I think this is the way it should be, and you should listen to me, because I'm the smartest woman on the planet. I'm a doctor. I know everything, that mentality. I can't stand when they do that in this show. And Diana never does that. Diana never makes her that way in the book. So I used to get so annoyed. They've really, I think, gotten Claire now in these last couple seasons more to the Claire we know from the book. A more normal Claire instead of this crazy, overbearing person that she was. I didn't like the way they did Claire earlier on. I feel like she's finally come into balance. And I think she's older and she's wiser. She doesn't have to, she's not as impetuous with things, She's a little more been around the block, know how these things roll, know how to get the man to do what I need him to do without being a bitch about it, that kind of thing that you get when you're in your 50s. You kind of learn, okay, sometimes you get things more with honey than vinegar, and not be overbearing with it. So I like it. Martina says, I think Jamie is stronger now and Claire is softer and wiser, and her medical stuff is not always up front and center like in previous seasons. Chef's kiss to you, Martina. I agree. Hot-blooded kilt. I love the passion stuff. Crombie has always been a crumb. Oh man, you guys, I can tell you're all loving this episode because you're all like chatty. Brenda says, I think Jamie's compromise with the ladies of the Ridge has a lot to do with him being with Claire. She has taught him that women can be strong and have more value than he may have previously thought because of the times. Diana says something on that too. You need me to finish my thought about what? What didn't I finish? I love Brie and Roger's love story. This is from Lynn. One of the reasons is because it's a different type of love than Jamie and Claire's. I agree. It's also an epic, timeless love, but Roger isn't the king of men. He's not perfect, but he loves Brie so much. My favorite sex scene in the entire book series is one with Brie and Roger. I agree. I think people, because he's not physically looking like Jamie, and I feel like they show like very heavy passion in their scenes. So I just feel like sometimes people want to always want to be so Jamie and Claire centric on everything that they're like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. Well, it's there. It's part of the story. Hi, Terry. Diana said it had more to do with Jamie's Scottish Highlands background. Yeah. I still see Claire more fearful and timid, even when Cunningham did his sneaky threat. She seemed frightened. I didn't think she seemed frightened. I think she kind of looked like she was putting her hand, but like letting him know, like, I'm not afraid. Like, I thought she was giving him the straight, no, I'm fine. Giving him the look like, you want to F with me? I have scalpels, bitch. I'll stab you. I'm not afraid to stab people. I proved that in episode 1. Martina says, I love the scene when Jamie is on the veranda watching a simple domestic scene on the ridge. Sam did such a good job with his facial acting so that we knew he was forming a clever plan in his head. Yeah, I thought Sam did great acting with his face. I think everybody did really good. Terry says, definitely a more closely book-aligned Claire. I think Katrina is happy being less bossy too. I agree with that. And anytime they talk to Diana, I think she would give them the business over that. Like when she talks at another event or whatever, she's like, well, they always got a strong woman. And she makes fun of them in it. And I think they are getting the point that she's not a big fan of that. Finger. Oh, okay. So you guys want to know what you won't be able to unsee once I tell it to you? Okay. So you saw really close ups on her hands because she's holding his face as they're finishing their sex and all of that. She has a very noticeable French manicure on her fingernails, like very noticeable, all shiny, perfectly white, the whole thing, right? And I'm looking at it going, oh my God, they let her have a French manicure in this scene where you're like so close up in their faces with her hands on his face and you got all this French manicured fingernails. I was just like, oh my God, why would they do that? Didn't anybody notice that? Didn't anybody say we got to get rid of the French manicure before we do a scene with close up on your hands? I said, I can't believe they did that because now every time I look at that scene and I was all into it and I thought it was so beautiful, I'm going to notice the French manicured fingernails. It was crazy. And I feel like now, as soon as I saw it, I can't look at it and not see that. So I said, do I ruin it for them and tell them that she did French manicure in the 1800s? And a noticeable one, not one that really looks so natural that it's not really noticeable that it's a French manicure. You can see it's like the white with the gloss fingernails and the whole. Veronica, of course, has a headcanon for it. She is like the headcanon girl to make everything work. She says, well, Lord John Grey probably gave her all his people to be pampered. I didn't look at her ring finger, because I was just like looking at her hands. I'm like, oh my gosh. Martina says, I didn't see the French manicure. I guess I was focused on other body parts. Oh my gosh. I couldn't believe that. I was like, didn't anybody notice this? Like, where are the women in the room to say, hey, wait a minute. We can see this fingernail action here. Okay, so this director is new, like I said, to this season. His first episode was last episode, and now we have this one. And I really like him. I think he does a lot of cool perspective shots and tracking shots and different things. And I think he does a really good job. The writer, as I said, Danielle Berrow. What I'm really loving, and I'm noticing it now this episode and the next episode as well, from what I'm thinking is going to be in it. You're seeing that they're taking the people who have really documented a character's arc, or initiated it, or really helped it bloom early on. Those writers are coming back and closing that arc so that their story is kind of complete. And I see them doing it on every character. And that's why people are like, why they spend time on all this? We needed to get through all these things on the ridge. That's not really, I think, the purpose of the season. The purpose of the season is to take all of the characters you love, create a little bit of a story for them, but in the process of the story, giving them a conclusion, a full arc on their whole story of the whole entire saga. So you see that now with this one. You see Danielle Berrow wrote Famous Last Words, which was a duality story, if you recall, of Roger and of Ian, okay? And both of them struggling. Ian telling the whole story of his loss, the stuff with Emily and losing the children and finding out what happened to him when he was cast out and all that kind of stuff. That was Danielle Berrow's episode, okay? And the same episode with Roger, just disoriented on everything that he thought he could do in his talents. And we kind of started him building himself up from that point forward, trying to find his place, trying to find what his purpose is and what he's trying to do. And then we've seen him over last season struggling with the idea of predestination and how can I get ordained when I don't know how I can swear to these concepts that I feel like I can't swear to based on our time travel knowledge and all of this kind of stuff, not to mention the mystery of the time travel and how time travel works. So you're getting all of that kind of wrapped, that arc where now we have Roger happy, understanding what happened with his father, understanding how that influences his perspective. That no, we've actually always been part of it. We didn't change it. It was always there, that we were there, meant to be there. So we're basically fulfilling God's plan in it, not changing it. And he finally understood all that. We get the memory about his father, which is such a cool aspect to weave in, to kind of give him a little bit of finality about why these things are happening and all of that. And him to get to a really good, happy place, going to get ordained, everything like that. So you can get his character arc completed and Ian's character arc completed in these episodes, right? Like inner character arc, I'm saying. I mean, they're still going to have parts in the story, but I mean, their inner demon that they've struggled with over a couple seasons both get resolved in this episode. And Danielle, who was the one that did Famous Last Words, which really focused on Roger and Ian and their plights and their insecurities and hangups and all of that, she's the one to bring it around to a close. Okay, that said, next week we have Tony. Tony is very known for the faith episode. Okay, she's known for several episodes. Let's get real. But she's accoladed on the faith episode. That was her baby, And she was also the one that wrote 100,000 Angels from last season. That was the finale that brought up all these questions about faith and this and that, okay? And all of the different clues of how things are going to resolve and all of that. Because remember, they said that the last two episodes of last season lays out the entire 8th season of what's going to happen. So you're getting that sense that she was a big part of that, how these things were going to resolve. And she's the one that wrote the original. She's not going to want to lower the impact of that original any more than you want it negated. You know what I mean? So she's going to make it work, but it's going to conclude that arc that she set in motion. It's going to be her thing to wrap as well. I'm not sure how it's going to resolve, but I do believe the faith situation is going to resolve next episode. So I don't think it's going to be dealt with much in the 8th, 9th, and 10th episode. Diana has outright said it's not in the 10th episode, and she wrote the 9th episode. I don't think she probably put much of it in there, which only leaves the 8th episode, which I think is King's Mountain. They're not going to have time to F around with Faith's storyline. So I think it's going to be all in this episode under Tony, so everybody can kind of be okay by the end of it. or not okay, whatever, you know. I personally think, as I've been thinking, I believe it's not going to be that somehow he saved Faith and that their mother was Faith. I don't think that's, I think there's an explanation, and there's probably a woo woo explanation in it somehow, that a time traveler was involved or whatever. Somehow it's connected to Claire's parents, whatever. But I don't think it's going to be that it is their daughter Faith that somehow got revived. I don't think they're doing that. And I'll tell you another reason why I don't think that. Way back when it first came out, the announcement and the furor over for this whole thing, you know, back last January or whatever it was, the initial thing was Diana saying, "Don't worry about it. Don't waste too much of your brain power." Like basically trying to calm people down. And then also, the first episode, a little thing was said there. Claire said, "I hope they don't smell the herring," as in like red herring. So I really feel like that was a clue, just like the little clock necklace thing on Amaranthus's visual. I think that was like a little hint, little whatever, you know, little zhuzh, that it's going to be that they're leading you down this track, but that's not the track it's going to be. You know what I mean? So I kind of think that you guys can all like calm down, let it be, let it play out. Anybody that's like freaking out about this Faith thing, let's see what they do with it before you freak out anymore. And I think it'll be resolved next week. I think that could be very well what it is, Donna. Donna says there was a theory out there that Fanny and Jane were the children of Claire's brother from Bomb, or that their mother, this is what I would think, their mother, Faith, was the child of Claire's brother. You know what I mean? They were basically Claire's brother's grandchild. And that could be. Or it could be that Faith is also a last child of Henry and Julia. It could be like a third child that they have later on that becomes that Faith. Tony Graffia, a writer on Bomb, no, not yet anyway. I don't think she wrote a Bomb episode. Sarah said, when Percy brought up Fergus's parentage, I started to wonder if they might adapt a small part of the space between and Faith as the lost daughter, but I think it unlikely. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to get into that, but I just want to give you all a calmness about it, you know, not to keep stressing, not to every time it's mentioned go, it was a really good episode if only they didn't mention the Faith storyline again. Like, let it go. Take a breath and see what happens. Everything they've done so far has been great. It really has, you know. I think they're doing a wonderful, wonderful job, and I feel like they're not out, and they've kind of hinted around when they talk about it as well. Their supposed daughter, I think if it was definite, I think they would have said it as a definite, and I don't think that's what they're doing. So I think everybody kind of needs to relax, let it go, see what they're giving you. I think a lot of people made judgment on it before it even had a chance to do anything. They're trying to pull together so many disparate things and weave it together with some kind of through lines. That's one of their through lines. It's also a through line into the power of everything. You know what I mean? The I don't want to say not supernatural, but you know what I'm talking about, the woo woo, like I say, you know, the stuff that is the dreams and the Mac mojos and the time travel and all of that stuff, because they're going into this infinity time now. They're going into this legacy period and all that kind of stuff. So they're going to want to bring in that stuff again to kind of give the destiny feel of it all, you know? And I think part of that is why they're using this as part of an angle into Claire, like learning about her blue light power and then questioning, could that have had something to do with this and so forth. So it makes sense that they're using it that way as a way, a tool, a device to explore it, you know? And I just think if everybody is, anytime it's mentioned, everybody's going to go into a ballistic fit. You're not going to give yourself a chance to enjoy anything. So I'm just like encouraging you all, just take a breath and relax with, see what they do. Okay, so I do think next week that will give us the fire and whatever they're doing on the fire, which I think they're going to do some twist. Either it's going to be both boys or something. But the bit with Henry Christian, you know, with the little frog was so cute. Enough to like yank your heart out, to have everybody going, oh God, that knows the books. I think they do that kind of stuff on purpose too, just to make everybody feel the dread. And also I think based on the previews that you're going to get whatever that bit was where she says, "Is it possible?" And that bit where she turns around and she was in the little quilted coat thing and she turns around and they're shocked. You see Jamie kind of go like this, and you see in the preview he goes like this, and then he looks at her like it's a connection between her and whatever this is that they're looking at, whoever this is. And if it's still that British Mrs. Fraser thing, if that wasn't Cunningham, and I tried to listen to see if I could pick up him ever saying Mrs. Fraser and sounding like that, and I couldn't quite pick it up. So I don't know. Who knows? It could be that her father comes walking in and does a surprise guest appearance. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that would be crazy. I don't know if the comp's going to come rolling up. I don't know who's going to come rolling up. I'm saying both signs because of the sign. Yeah, that sign breaking was a big sign, I think. Diane says, "I love that we still have Buck like we got Murtaugh longer." Yeah, I think that we're going to get Buck in the 10th book too. Terry says the person who says Mrs. Fraser is not the voice of the actor who plays Cunningham. Did it sound like her father's voice? Veronica says, "I'd love for the comp to show up." Uncle Lamb. Wow, wouldn't that be crazy? That would be crazy. I don't know, but I'm ready for any. I have a feeling like this is her last. Understand this. Like, think Tony, okay? And understand this is her last episode for this show. So it's going to be a humdinger, okay? I just know it. I'm here for it, but I'm very curious to see what she's going to do with this. I think that whoever that surprise appearance is, though, is going to be in her episode. So all of that's going to be great. But I do think you're going to get the end of that with her episode because she basically started it with the Faith story. She continued it with the 100,000 Angel story. I think it's her episode that's going to close it, and reveal everything. So, and plus, I think it for another couple reasons. I put it down here in the future. Should I tell you now? I'll just jump ahead and tell you now. The future where you hear Mrs. Fraser and you see Claire turn in that blue quilt jacket and Claire says in the VO, "Is it possible?" And they show her face surprise. I think we're going to get that or part of it in this coming episode. And then I said, I actually think the big chunk of that storyline of Faith, that storyline, will be delivered in the next episode for a few reasons. One, evidence of things not seen, which is the title of the episode, is seen in the Bible as the definition of faith. Hebrews 11:1. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So I think that's a big clue right there. Second, Tony Graffia wrote the episode. She usually packs a lot of monumental moments in her episodes. 3, she actually wrote the faith episode in season 2. And she's most familiar with the nuances of that episode and would not want to write anything that contradicts it, So I think she's going to take that episode. She'll take ownership of it. And lastly, the previews suggest some woo-woos and reveals on the front of that. You see Jamie waking up and going, something's wrong, and having his little mojo dream, a few things like that. Her being, "Is it possible?" So I just think we're going to get a lot of that kind of stuff. I wonder if this is going to be when we get Master Raymond as well. Because Master Raymond appeared in her episodes, Faith, 100,000 Angels. So his appearance may be in this episode as well. So we got a lot to look forward to in this next episode. So I think this was a good chance to have a breather before that we probably really needed. Jamie and Claire looking shocked. Yes, that's what it was. It was that exact moment, only from a different camera angle, where he turns around and he looks at her. And then he kind of looks back and forth at her and him like as if he sees something that's connected somehow. And Fanny crying. Yes, Fanny crying. I'm curious what it'll be. But I really don't think it's going to be that he resurrected her faith. So that we'll see. But I just want you all to kind of take a breather. And whatever it comes out to be, let it be. Especially if they don't make it that what everybody thought it was going to be. Then let it say, "Oh, okay, we didn't do that." There's probably a purpose, and I think we'll see it by the end of the season, why they did this. I already see it for a certain couple reasons, but anyway. All right, so that's what I said. I think they're circling back on the stories that they started themselves with the writers. So that makes me curious about what Ron's episode, how he's going to kind of tie it back with what he did, because he did the Kalanin episode, right? Season 3, 1. So I think he did that episode. So I think that he's kind of going to end with a battle. I kind of think that works too. Okay. The other thing, before I go any further, I want to tell you about this cool Easter egg that I found out that the show is doing with the opening credits. Has anybody noticed this? I've noticed at this particular time that I watched, because I'll be frank with you, when it starts, I've been just going like where it has a little thing you can click and says skip the credits or whatever, and I hit that frequently because usually it's like midnight and I'm trying to get to the episode as I'm bleary eyed, right? And I usually just hit skip the credits and I get right to the like stones and then the title card and stuff, right? So I have to tell you, this was so cool what they're doing. And I went back and spent last night looking at the credit sequence of every single episode so far to try to see if what I'm thinking is true, and it is. They are taking the last shot right before they go to the circle shot of the credits where it says, over the sea to sky. And when they do the end sky, you see the lady, the dancer, like up close. And then it cuts to a shot of Jamie and Claire doing whatever, like this wide, big shot of Jamie and Claire. Like season 1, it's them, going through Glencoe on the horse and, whatever. Season 2, it's the ship going to, them taking them to France and all that. Well, what they have done is the last shot before the stone shot of that shot of Jamie and Claire, they're taking every episode and corresponding that episode to that season's final shot of Jamie and Claire. So episode 1 had them riding through Glencoe. Episode 2 had the ship turning and heading over to France. Episode 3 had the long shot of the ship going like over the sea, the 4th episode had them on Fraser's Ridge, that shot of them just looking out on Fraser's Ridge. Episode 5 had them kind of looking out with like a fiery cross kind of half-ass built next to them. Episode 6, this episode, had them standing with snowy mountains overlooking the snow falling and stuff, for Breath of Snow and Ashes season. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I was freaked out. I was like, I can't believe this cool little thing they're doing. So now I'm curious, like the episode, season 7, was them just kind of gallop on like this horse that was kind of doing like this prancy gallop in North Carolina, just like, I don't know, by the forest in North Carolina. I don't know if they're going to do, but they did that for both halves because I checked it. So after next episode, I don't know what they're doing for episodes 8, 9, and 10. But I thought that was such a cool thing, little thing, little Easter egg to find, but it's very cool. And Matt is like, that's Matt's card with the one where they have the sweeping scene of Jamie and Claire at the end right before the stone shot. That's Matt's showrunner card. So I think that's cool. That's kind of like a little wink, wink. So now I said, all of my skipping the credits and going to the stone and seeing the title card. Now I said, this is their way to make me watch the credits every episode. And I only saw it because when I did it this time, it cut right before the stones. And I saw this gorgeous shot of the mountains all snow-capped and snow flying around. I'm like, that wasn't in the credits before, because I know I did the credits show. I like studied every shot. I said, wait a minute. That's Snow and Ashes. That's Breath of Snow and Ashes. This is episode 6. I said, let me go see. And I went back and I was like, oh my God. I read and told Jordan, I said, I know you're not going to care about this, but I got to tell you what I just saw. So you have to go check it out, see what I mean. It's that last shot right before the stones on every credit sequence, and it's changed out for each episode to the corresponding season/book. Anyway, so that was cool. So what I'm going to do is kind of go through each of the 4 things and talk about each one. So you have 4 main storylines. All 4 storylines incorporate the themes of mercy and feminine power and influence, and closes a multi-season arc for 2 of the main characters, Ian and Roger. It also incorporates two major reveals, which is Pigweed's knowledge and influence in the whole situation with Ben, and then two, Roger's Mobius twist backstory. So it accomplished a lot. It was, even though it was slower paced, it does a lot. Okay, so we have the Ridge Life, we have Rachael and Ian story, we have Roger Bree story, and we have William Ben Denny story. Okay, so we're going to start with the Ridge story since that's where the episode starts. So even though he made a deal with the devil in the last episode, we kind of pick up with that whole story. We see Claire come in. She's doing something with, I think it was alcohol and little pads of some sort. And you see Cleveland, and he's just, I need to move. What's that smell? This, that, the other. He says, what did you do to me? And she says, I removed the musket ball from your back. But he's still paralyzed from the waist down, and Claire doubts whether he'll ever walk again. And when he says, what's that smell? She says, well, loss of bowel and bladder control happens in this situation, which is just like totally more emasculating for him, more despairing for him. I mean, bad up, you can't walk, but he's going to now need his mom to wipe his butt, clean his sheets, do all this stuff that for him, for somebody like him, that's got to be like very humiliating and very like, my quality of life sucks, right? And so now he ends up telling Jamie, now you want to get your revenge. You had your wife save me so you could have the revenge of killing me. And he said, I don't think I could kill you if I wanted to. My wife wouldn't let you because you're her patient. Right away, we're getting that introduction to the female influence and how she has control in her little world here of the surgery. You see Cunningham now getting a little more desperate because he really doesn't want to live like this. And he basically asked Jamie, I really don't want to live. I mean, I'm going to live this time, and I really don't want to live in this situation. And basically wanting Jamie to give him the mercy of putting him out of his misery. And Jamie's like, you made your bed, gotta lie in it. And a little bit that he wanted to die in battle. He's like, yeah, it would be more honorable, but you made your bed, gotta lie in it, so that was like heavy. And then also we see Benjamin Cleveland out there. See him out there being very Cleveland, saying how I should hang you myself because of the way you treated me last time, I was here and all of this. And you see Jamie just like giving him the look. But the thing that's interesting is Jamie has the same knowledge as Cunningham had, because Jamie knows when he's supposed to die. So he's not going to like live in fear of all this either. So I kind of thought that was interesting. And then he says, you have my word. Like, I know I'm basically going to have to do this, and I'll do it. Because bottom line, he had to save the rich. So he knew that. We get another Frank voiceover saying, you knew what the price was going to be when you asked for his help. Just needling him. Now him being in this paraplegic state, this now feels like a sentence. Instead of it being a gift, this prophecy he has, it feels like a sentence, And the thing is, you got to understand, this isn't like today having this problem. Back then, at that time, you didn't have easy places to be able to wheel yourself around. You didn't have any kind of an ADA-friendly environment. You know what I mean? So you could a serious problem to survive in this time period and live like that, where you constantly need help and assistance. You can't do anything yourself, and it's a very rugged area to live like that. So I understood Elspeth, like, if I got to do all this, I'd rather do it in an area that I feel comfortable in. So that made sense too. So Jamie writes this decree to all the Fraser Ridge men that betrayed him, giving them 10 days to vacate the land, just basically take a couple things they can carry, but all the stuff you build up stays here, including the trading post thing. And he says, if you ever return, we'll shoot you on sight. And Claire's like, would you really do that? He said, they betrayed me and hunted me across my land. Yes, I would do that, And so she asked about the women and children. She doesn't do it in a bossy way, like, you can't do that to the women and children. She was just like, well, what about the women and children, They might not even have known what their husbands were doing. They certainly wouldn't go to them for advice like you do with me. and talk to them about their decision. They're just going to do what they want. Why should they have to suffer, But she wasn't pushy with it. She just implanted the thought. So it kind of niggled around in his head a little bit. Okay. And then Jamie's like, now, belt, book, and candle, right of exclamation, which is all right from the book. Or so much dialogue right from the book in all of this episode. He gives Josiah the papers to like send around, but he delivers Hiram Crombie's himself, which I kind of loved. Walks up, the wife is just like, he's not here. Hiram! He yells, Hiram! He knew she was bullshit. And he comes out and he tells him that, he has to leave the land. And he says, the Beardsleys will be taking over the trading post. So that's really great little nod to the Beardsleys trading post, which was never really in play with the Beardsleys background, with that little horror show episode that we had. We didn't really see them having a trading post, but it's like a wink nod to the book fans, Beardsleys trading post, because that does become a big trading post. Remember, the Browns kind of turn it into a trading post, and the girl that's the daughter ends up being the owner, and all of that kind of stuff in the book becomes a thing, but it's still an area place that they go and they buy stuff and everything. It just kept the name Beardsleys Trading Post, even though there was no Beardsleys there. But now the Beardsleys are going to have the trading post on the ridge. I kind of thought that was a good, like, little adaptive choice. And then all of a sudden he's there working on his stuff, feeling like, okay, I did my thing. And here comes Mrs. Crombie, followed by all the other women. And Mrs. Crombie gets on her hands and knees, puts her head down, and he's just like, get up, don't do this to me. And she starts to beg, a little smirky. And the thing is, for Jamie, he knows what it is to have that fear. He has that fear himself of like being, helpless, like laying there in his filth, having to have a leg amputated. Remember, he didn't want to live with that and all that. So he gets it. And for mercy. And they swear, like, we'll make our husbands behave from now on if you'll let us stay. He says, how are you going to do that? Mrs. Crombie says, your wife will understand what a woman can do if to make a man stay true to his word, and we all kind of know what she's going for there. And Tom even's like, even back then, Punani power rules. He didn't say Punani, but the other word. I cracked up when he said that. So he's obviously going to flip. He's going to change his mind. In that moment, he's going to change his mind and he's going to bend. But he's just keeping it tough right now. So Jamie says, no, I've said what I've said. I got to stick with it. Okay. So, but then he sees Claire and tending the little bees with the grandchildren, teaching them, how to do the honey and stuff like that. So he calls a meeting at the lodge with Claire, where he announces that he's going to revoke the letter of banishment. And so he announces this, and then Jamie says, but the contracts I made with you gentlemen are void. And of course, Crombie's pissed. And he says, from now on, I will only address your wives. And he says, ladies, step forward. And I love this. It was such a great visual with the women looking like a little bewildered, like us. We're to step forward, go in there with like your handicap card and get kind of accessible situation. You can see they're not used to being front and center. They're used to having that demure thing behind their men. And they come forward like, okay. And you see Claire smiling because understand, Claire comes from where the feminism movement was really picking up. As she's seeing these women are first now getting a taste of being able to have some say in their life. And it gives her a smile like they're introducing this, kind of. Anyway, yeah, Fraser's Ridge was the first wave of feminism. Okay, so Crombie is pissed. He says, from here on, I will only address your wives. Ladies, step forward. He said, the men will swear fealty to me and turn in all their weapons, which right away they got upset about. And he's like, how will we hunt? He says, as I said, the Beardsleys will now run the trading post. You can buy your meat from them, which is interesting. That's going to get old real quick, I think, when you're having to live every day by the meat that you hunt, but maybe it'll just be temporary. Who knows? He says that the wives will sign new contracts and the land will belong to them. not their hubby. And the men look all butthurt and they're like, how will we hunt? He says, nobody is forcing you to stay. Like commanding Jamie, right? But what was nice too about the women is this was another theme. You saw the women coming to Jamie and asking him to have mercy on them. You see Rachael coming to Joseph Brandt asking him to have mercy and to give Ian a chance to see Emily and all that kind of stuff. So you're seeing this kind of little thread throughout. With in the William Ben thing, you saw Denny come to help William. Anyway, okay. He emphasizes that the land is not theirs. And he says, if any man shows betrayal to their wives or him, they'll answer to him even to the point of death. Okay. And I think this is to make sure that the women don't get bullied or beaten or anything like that behind closed doors. That they don't take out his decision on them, because remember when they came to him, they said, if our husbands knew we were here, we would be beaten. So he's making sure with that little line in there, to your wives or to me, you'll have to answer to me for it. So it does a little note of protection for them. Claire is there, very proud of her husband. They really showed a good job of showing Jamie as wise, kind, merciful. And you see Claire kind of amused at everybody's reaction, kind of watching it play off, not being the one in charge, not dictating, just kind of making little faces and watching. And I thought that was great. I don't think she would have overrun him in the middle of a public thing like that. The show, probably old show, would have done that. She would have said, this is how we're going to handle this. Wives, you'll come and what? No. That's a Jamie thing. Cool. And you saw also Mrs. Crombie and Claire make eye contact, which I kind of thought that was cool too. She knew that somehow Claire might have had a little influence in this. Somehow, I think. And so Claire waits outside, and Jamie says he feels a little bit lighter in spirit that he did this. And he says, but he hopes that he's not allowing a nest of vipers to fester, basically, by him being kind in this. And she says, now the women will be watching their husband like hawks. And it also helps them because all their brothers and sons and stuff will now not turn against him. He's shown them mercy and being good to them. It ensures the loyalty of their family, which Diana said too, which I'll get to. So then we see Mrs. Cunningham comes with one last request while he's feeling merciful. She's like, I'm so glad you're so filled with charity. And she says, maybe you'll have a little left for me. And he says, what do you want now? And she asks if she can take her son away to care for him. And he says, he's my prisoner. And so you see Claire go, where is it that you want to take him? And she appeals to Claire and she says, I want to take him home to England. He's all I have left. And she has like tears in her eyes, which is something for her. And she says, if I have to spend the rest of my life wiping his bottom and changing his sheets, I'd like to do it in a place I know. And you see Claire and Elspeth as they're packing up to go and they say goodbye. We see the two witch frenemies, the White Witch and the Wicked Witch frenemies say goodbye. And it was very emotional. I got surprisingly emotional over that. Of course, it was toward the end of the episode, so I was already emotional. But still, you didn't expect to feel that emotional over Claire and Elspeth, but I did. And it was a little sad for Claire, too, because she kind of bonded with her, and they had a way of talking. And every time Claire has a friend, like they got to disappear somehow, it seems. So there goes another friend of hers, but that's okay. I was curious though, because I got the impression from a previous interview, like that they were there, that there was going to be more machinations by Cunningham, even from the wheelchair or from being an invalid. He would use that to his advantage and all of this. Remember they said that in an interview, the guy, Kieran Bew, how that's not going to happen, right? They're done. Is that correct? Am I seeing that wrong? I mean, I'm thinking they're done. She's talking about going to England, and we had the goodbyes. So I'm thinking they're done. So I don't know. Maybe we misheard what he said. I'm assuming they're not coming back. But he made it seem like they were in the previous episode's interviews. Okay. So Elspeth says to Claire, in another lifetime, you and I might have been great friends. But as it is, I must say farewell. And Claire smiles and says, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Elspeth says, dare I ask which I was? And she takes her hand and she says, I counted you as a friend, Elspeth. And Elspeth brings her hands up to her lips like this. And it was just so nice. And she says, goodbye, Claire. And they go. And like, you just felt like, oh, I didn't expect to feel emotional in this moment, but I did. I thought that the woman that played Elspeth did such an outstanding job in this season. And she's just been really a highlight of the season thus far, her and Fanny both, which Jeff and I were saying like what has been our standout characters, and we both felt that about them. I knew Jeff was going to love Elspeth. I told you guys that way up front. I said he's going to love her. Totally his kind of character. Okay. Plus, he watched this whole documentary with the lady that played the Wicked Witch of the West. So he loves that character anyway, which is fun. Like, yeah, of course I'm going to love her. And it really just showed how friendships are affected by war and politics. Kind of was, I thought, apropos even for our time now. But that it's a shame. That was an idea that went across a few things too, because you got that with Denny and William, where he said, I hope when we get through on the other side of this, we can come back together, like reconnect. And he's like, I hope so too. And that was like a nice nod to what war and politics and all of that does to relationships. So I like that. Okay. As they leave, Jamie says, this doesn't mean our troubles are over. Cunningham may be gone, but Major Ferguson is not. And we know that. So that's basically like, it's coming still. More stuff is coming. We're just basically rolling out of Act 2. Getting ready to go into Act 3. If you look at this as 3 acts, which I do. Okay, so I have a Diana D. I actually have 2. Some of these are from the Lit Forum, and some of these are from her Facebook post. I'll probably put these in my deep dive review too, but that's not coming for a while, so I wanted to share it now. So this was actually on last week's episode, but she wrote something that applies to this week, so that's why I want to share it with you. This was an answer to Cunningham's. Jamie had said when they were debating what to do, how to deal with the situation, and they were all talking, and Claire said that snake, and Buck had said, let's just take him out now. And Jamie had said that Cunningham wouldn't want to get him alone and asked about this. And this was Diana's answer to that. She said, I think whoever wrote that line actually meant that Cunningham knows he likely couldn't get Jamie alone and therefore would do something else. She said, in Jamie's conversation with Claire about his knowledge that Cunningham means to trap him and take him to Patrick Ferguson, she says, I thought they should have played up Ferguson just a bit more in 805 and 806. She says he is the central figure in the Battle of King's Mountain, and Jamie certainly knows that if he's been reading Frank's book. But he's a very vague figure in this part of the show. She wishes like they would have built up the tenseness about Ferguson, talked about him a little more, educated the audience a little more on him. Because him and Cleveland are both like bad dudes, from opposite sides, but both are bad dudes, bad characters. She says Jamie concludes that the ambush will happen at Lodge because Cunningham knows Jamie will be unarmed owing to the prohibition against weapons in the Lodge. And at the same time, contradicts Claire's logical argument that the prohibition wouldn't stop Cunningham from having a weapon. And Jamie says it would because Cunningham's a Mason of the 25th degree and therefore takes the rules of Masonry seriously. She says, we're inclined to believe Jamie on this, both because he's a senior Mason himself and because we've been led to believe that Cunningham actually does have principles, which Benjamin Cleveland certainly doesn't. Well, I wanted to bring that out to you because a few people have said Cleveland didn't seem that bad of a character in the book. And Cleveland was a bad character. He was known to be the terror of the Tories. He was known for stringing up Tories. I mean, maybe they didn't say it as much in the book, but it was true. He was a very bad, ruthless character. And equally, Ferguson was just as ruthless on the other side. He was just as bad. He would terrorize Patriot settlements and all of that kind of stuff. He was known as the Bulldog Ferguson. And he also was the person that created the famous Ferguson rifle as well, which was a quicker rifle, but was more expensive to make. So it wasn't practical to mass produce. But he used it in the King's Mountain thing himself. which made it harder to fight them. Okay. And then another person said, judging by what we've seen so far, the show's version of Benjamin Cleveland does have one guiding principle that the only good Tory is a dead one, preferably strung up on the nearest tree. And she said the show actually did get that one right. So, like, she's very adamant that Cleveland is a bad dude. Whether you thought he was in the book or not, he is. Okay, I have two more Diana deeds here. Cleveland was so vindictive, he actually kept Ferguson's horse as a trophy. Oh, Benjamin Cleveland, was he in the Ken Burns documentary? I still have to watch the last 2 episodes of that because I got sidetracked into this. Like in the heart of the season, I don't have time to do much else. He took his horse after he was killed and marched home on the white charger. Yeah, he was a bad dude. But I have seen a couple people say, I don't remember Cleveland being that bad in the books, being that terrible. They seem like they've made him worse in the show. And I'm like, he was bad. Okay, so these two are from Facebook. So you guys might have seen these, but they're worthwhile to share. So this was in response to the comment that move to rewrite the land contracts and put the women in charge so incredibly powerful and touching. Diana answers that by saying, well, Jamie may be angry as well as he might be having been hunted across his own land by men who were his tenants, but he isn't stupid. If the men he banished leave, they'll take their wives and children, but that means that all the brothers, sons, nephews, uncles, etc. of those women will also be alienated, thus putting a huge dent in Jamie's potential forces. Excluding the miscreant men, but generously allowing the women to keep their husbands and feed them if they want to, but giving the land to the women not only ensures the women's loyalty to him, but that of their other non-guilty male relatives. And finally, he really doesn't want to have to leave large chunks of his land lying vacant and fallow and not planted or harvested. That would put a big dent in his income too, as he takes shares from his tenants' crops and sales. So yes, he is very magnanimous in taking care of the women, but he's also one quick thinker. Note that it takes him a bit longer to do this in the book, and we know more about why he's doing it because Claire's thoughts tell us. So that's one thing she said. And the other one was about whether or not it was Claire's idea in the book that the ladies of the Ridge make the plea to Jamie. She says it wasn't, for once, Claire's cool modern idea. Jamie grew up in the Highlander culture, which recognizes the strength of women, whether as warriors, mothers, wise women, and witches. And his sister would have made sure he knew her value. And she does a little grin there. And note, for those of you that follow the Jacobite Chronicles with me, I'm stepping away from this deep for a second. That's something really reiterated as well there when we really see the Highland women in action and stuff in that period of time. They were very much valued and worked and had a share of thoughts to share and votes and things and stuff. So that is true. He says the notion of women owning property is also part of the historical legal system of the Scottish Highlands. Jamie was furious with the men who tried to kill him, reasonably enough, but when he's anesthetized them and basically excommunicated them and begun to cool down, he begins to think rationally. And he does the best thing for the women and children and for his own situation, which in turn impacts the well-being of everyone on the ridge. Because the economic and social health of said ridge depends on the strength, courage, and acuity of its proprietor. As Jamie tells Cunningham during a fraught moment, it's my ridge. I can everything. So that's what she has to say on the ridge story. Ruth says on the show, it kind of implies Claire has a lot to do with it. And I think it has to do that maybe she gives him a suggestion. But you never see that. You just kind of assume it because she's smiling. But you kind of feel like they made a talk and throw around ideas of what they could do. And then after he considered everything, he came to that conclusion. But I think she's pointing out why he would want to do that, what it would do for him. And remember, even with his own situation with his parents, that was the contract. The female, the Mackenzie of the group, Ellen, the land would pass to her and her children if something happened. So that's why I remember Dougal wanted to marry Claire if something happened to Jamie, because it would be hers by right as his widow or whatever, and then that would be him to be able to take it over. So that was a thing where women could have property and had say in property and things like that as well in the Scots Highlands. She was smiling because she was proud of him. I think so too. Yeah, and Martina says the show clearly shows it when he had the idea on the porch, I think. Yeah, I think he saw that and he thought, don't they say the women said something like, what would you do if it was your child or something? Somebody said that. That came out somewhere. And you see him and Claire give each other a look like, oh, look at all the shit we did for our kids. We split to save Brianna. We did all this. And now they're dealing with this conundrum about faith. So that's kind of a little heartstring to pluck for them right now. Okay. So next we get to the Rachael Ann story. And this was just a stellar wing of the story. It had, I think, the most tweaks and changes in it because, like, some of the nitty gritty of it. But the basic overall thing was the same, but it had some changes in the nitty gritty because we don't have Sylvia. We don't have that whole impetus of tension, a woman getting empowered to stand up for herself against the man and all that kind of stuff. We didn't get that. So we had to reinfuse that a little bit into the story by showing Rachel's insecurity in that and her finally feeling like, yeah, here I was in a place to be face to face. She realized, like, this woman's not the big bad here either. You saw like a kind of a camaraderie with these two wives, which I also liked as well in this storyline. And there was no Jenny. Jenny kind of appeased Rachel's insecurities in the book. Rachel would start to have them, and Jenny would say, hey, don't even think like that because I'm here too. I'm making sure that shit don't happen. This woman and her people kicked my son to the curb. I ain't having any kind of chance of her getting him being back with her. Jenny was all over that. We don't have Jenny. So we had to kind of tweak a little more on this one, but I thought it was very good and extremely moving. I actually teared up on this storyline. So Rachel and Ian get up north. They're trying to learn the fate of Emily and the sun, swiftest of blizzards. And as you go, you see Rachel's face getting more and more internal and more disturbed the closer they get to Mohawk country and the further she gets from her new home that she has been in now for almost a year, and more out of her comfort zone as she gets further north. And then we get this prominent river running through the episode, both on the way there, post visit, while they're talking about sharing their feelings, where they have that kind of intense talk, and he offers to just let's go. That all was there as well. And it's a part of the river where you think about the river back in the episode when he has those flashbacks of his time with works with her hands, and she was like working in the river and stuff like that. A lot of his memories of Emily is connected to the river. He got his white blood washed and scrubbed off him by the river and all of that kind of stuff. So that was something very connective to his Mohawk identity, that river. And that's why I think it stirred him when he was there. Like, she's seeing how he's getting, like, thinking about his old life as the closer he gets to it. And it's more and more disturbing her as she holds her baby for almost a security, it felt like, Once they get to the area, we see his friend, the other Mohawk friend. I think it was the same guy that when he ran into Caharotin over in that episode where they fought, remember? I think it was that guy was in that episode as well, the same guy. And he kind of tells them what happened, and we find out this is all real story that happened with the massacres and all of that stuff. And so we get some of that history from Joseph Brandt. He kind of like first, well, that's because he came to us, and we see Joseph Brandt as a little more antagonistic than we saw him in the book, because in the book all of that was about Sylvia. So he wasn't really antagonistic. He started to talk. We had the sage from there. There was a little more of a warm thing. This had to be the tension. So they needed to infuse a little more tension into just these characters. And it would make sense that he would be pissed, that you turned against your Mohawk family to be with the Continentals, our enemy in this war. And so it makes sense he would have a little bit of a toot about it. And then in that meeting, well, first of all, I was saying about the friend. He's with the friend, And you could see as they're talking and sharing stuff, this kind of took the place of, remember in the book, the Indians come to the house and they're all sitting out on the porch, and you see Rachael starting to feel like she's not part of this life. She's not part of this old world of his. You kind of see her struggling with it a little while they're outside talking. This was kind of the feel of that scene. Only it was on their way there and he was sitting by this fire talking to them. And you could see she kind of feels like she doesn't belong in this conversation, but she's trying to be supportive. And we find out that a lot of things are ashes. Kaharotin is gone. This is another strike because now she's free, right? When she hears that the husband died, that's again kind of internally makes her wince a little. Like that means that she needs a man. She's free and has kids and needs a man. And so she's available. And so that's like weighing in her mind a little. That's the first little plop that drops in her festering of being upset. We get to Joseph Brandt's house, and Joseph Brandt is like palatial. It looks palatial. The outside, when you see the exterior shots, looks very much like Joseph Brandt's house. When you look it up, they did pick an exterior that looked like it, but the interior really doesn't match the exterior. Like all of those long wall of windows, you can't see that from the outside. There is no long wall of windows on the outside of that house. So that didn't really make a whole lot of sense visually. But inside, it's very eclectic for an Indian chief, and you kind of get the sense of how worldly he was. We got a piano forte, we have harps, we have big, huge wall hangings everywhere. And I messaged Salima about this because I think that looked like the room and the way the dimensions were of the room. It looked like Hopeton House. I think the interior might have been shot at Hopeton House because it looks like that room. Because I was saying to Salima, when you turn around and you see the doorway over here, and then there's another doorway across all the way down here, it looks like the same room where they filmed the scene in the Hellwater episode of Lost Things or whatever episode, where Jamie went to first meet and talk to Lord Dunsany, and he came in and he bowed and he talked to him, and he was kind of walked in through this doorway. It looked like that room where they met and talked with all the windows against the background. But let me know if anybody went to Hopeton House. Let me know if you think that's right where it was filmed, because I'm curious, because it was beautiful. So I just was really blown away by the interior of this guy's house. Like he like was well to do. It looked almost royal. They looked royal. The couple of Catherine and Joseph Brandt looked like Indian royalty in the way that they were dressed. Like I really wanted to take in their costume. It was gorgeous, right? Let's see. Gorgeous clothes, gorgeous costuming in that as well. And we get the whole backstory about them burning, the British attacking the Continentals, and it's why they burned the Mohawk villages. And he goes back, well, that's because you attacked us first and all this. And he says, you left. He says, I didn't leave. I was told to leave. I didn't leave voluntarily, to go over to the other side. I was pushed out, which now that weighs on Rachael. You see that hit her, and tears come to her eyes a little bit, because would he have left? Would he leave now if she comes out? Like this is what she's thinking. He didn't ever really want to leave her. And so she's trying to just control herself, but I can understand her situation, why she'd feel like that. So Catherine, the wife, also has the influence, and you can see how Joseph Brandt kind of defers to her a little bit, like lets her interject, lets her have voice. And so you see her say, what do your wives think of that? Or like she makes a comment about him having multiple wives, and she ends up saying that they're there, her and her children are here with us because we've sheltered people. And Joseph Brandt's like, too bad you won't see them. And he's like, please, I really just want to see them and know they're okay. No, you're not welcome here. Just go, basically. And they have to go. And as they're then back by the river, she starts to talk to him, and he says, I'm sorry. I see this is causing you pain. And she says, I should have been prepared for this. I don't know why I'm feeling like this. And she's not used to feeling like that. Some have taken issue with this whole part of the story. Ian says that knowing they're alive, we won't go back. We'll just go home. Knowing they're alive will have to be enough. And some have taken issue with her being insecure, but I thought her doubts were real. Even though she's a friend and all that, and she knows who she is, and she knows Gian loves her, she is now knowing that he loved Emily, and he has a child by her. And he didn't leave voluntarily. It's not like they split. Like he was upset leave. I mean, we know he was suicidal when when he was made to leave them. So remember the whole bury the hatchet thing. Like she has reason to be concerned, and any woman in her position would be concerned. No matter how much he loves her. You're with the man's first wife. He still has residual feelings for her. Even though he's with Rachael, he never indicated he'd leave Rachael or anything like that. It makes sense that she would feel that because she knows there's unresolved things there. And this episode does resolve those things so that it gives resolution for Ian. And she says she knows he loves her, but she says if he had to choose to save one, which would it be? You'd have those doubts. And also for her, Ian is her first love, her true love, her first husband. There is nobody else but Ian. Whereas Ian had this whole other life and this whole other wife that he was dearly loved. So it makes sense that she'd have those doubts and stuff. That doesn't make her bad, or it doesn't make her wrong, or the story bad. It made sense to me. It was her first sexual experience too. She doesn't know what this woman was like, what their life was like. You could see her struggling with that. She shared thy body. She shared thy, whatever, thy bed, your soul, bit of your soul. Like she's feeling that there's somebody else there. It's the same thing that you see with Claire when him and John talk, and it's a part of season 4 I'm talking about, or book 4, when they talk, and she feels like she's not part of that life that Jamie had at that time. And she feels like a sense of jealousy, even though it's not that Jamie would ever have interest in Lord John, but she feels a sense of jealousy as they have a time that they're sharing and a life that they've shared that she wasn't part of. And they can talk about things that she doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. And it's kind of like that, where you feel like this person has a claim on the person I love, their life, that I never had. And now am I the outsider here? I'm surrounded by all his people and his area that he lived in with her and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I get it. So then Rachael, who now had been shown by Ian that he was willing to just say, okay, let's go and leave it unresolved. It gave her enough courage to go to the chief, as the women went to the chief in Jamie, and kind of beg for him to show mercy and let him see Emily. And only thing that kind of convinces him is when she brings it up that they share a child together. That seems to soften him a bit. But some people say, well, why would he even listen to her? Really, like, why would he care what she thinks? But the thing is, the Indians, the Native Americans, have a much different perspective of women. They saw women very much as equals. That was part of their society all along. So that's not the way they think. They don't look at women like lesser than. They look at them as equal. The women are the one that make the choice of who they're going to accept as their husband. You know what I mean? So, they have a lot of the power in those societies. And then Jeff was talking about how there was even a lot of gay men. They have a whole gay society in the Indian tribes as well, which I thought was interesting. So then they go, and we get this fantastic scene that I love so much, of this scene with Ian and Rachael coming in to see Emily and Totus, and you see them putting the white flowers in the vase for peace. Now in the book, we had the thing where Rachael paints her face white. So people were like, why didn't they have her paint her face? Because this wasn't really the environment for that. Like it would have felt weird in this environment for her to do that. And it would have taken over this. It would have been the thing you're focused on, because it would have been so odd to see. And it would have been an explanation of how they got to do that. So it made sense to get the idea there that this is a token of peace. You see the wife, who was the one that taught Rachael how to put the paint on her face. You see the wife helping to put these flowers in place. So it worked, I thought. And Mohawk would be very apt to listen to a woman who felt that she was speaking from the spirit. They also had a lot of reverence for Quakers. They called them peace talkers, which you see her reference her when she says, oh, you're a Quaker? Are you a peace talker then? And Diana does a piece on that, and I'm going to read that to you. This Diana. She says the show made a faint stab at giving a reason for Brant to listen to Rachael, although they certainly didn't make a discernible point of it. She says when Rachael tells the Brants that she is a friend, Catherine gets interested and asks Rachael if she's a peace talker. Evidently, Rachael has never heard of this, but gives an uncertain yes on principle because friends definitely favor peace. She says what goes unestablished is that friends were highly esteemed as peace talkers and often used as go-betweens in conflicts between Indian groups or Indians negotiating with white people, owing to their impartiality and obvious goodwill to both sides. And that's why Brant pays attention to her. But as noted, nobody who didn't already know about peace talkers would know that. So she was saying maybe the audience aren't quite understanding the way that Indian tribes looked at Quakers and revered them as peace talkers and peace mediators between them. So that's just for your information. I am kind of surprised a little bit that Danielle didn't want to do the face paint though, because she's into like all of these customary cultural things, but she still got the idea of the white color with the flowers. We see Rachael and Augie meet Emily. She comes in and Rachael and Augie are there with Ian. Rachael offers to give him alone time and he says, no, I want you and the wee man with me. And they introduce them and you see the women trying to get a gauge on each other, but they're understanding that they're good people. And I think they also know that Ian wouldn't be with anybody that wasn't a positive, good, kind-hearted person. And now this like figment of Emily is now real in front of her. And Rachael says, we see Ian say he's sorry to hear about Kaharo and that he was a good man. Rachael says she's happy to meet them. And that Ian's told her a lot about her and her children too. And so it's really nice, really beautiful little meeting. And just like the girl that plays Emily, I thought she was excellent too. Her face and her acting was so good to show like the sacrifice she's making and the pain it's causing her to do it, to give her son up to save him. It's really just beautiful, and that sacrificial element was also a big play in this episode as well. So I wish there was something I could do to help you. And she says you can. She says she had a dream. Now this was also a little tweaked from the book because there's no other husband there. So that doesn't make a sense in the story if they would have said that the husband's going to kill her son. And plus, I didn't like that whole concept anyway, because I felt like, well, why are you staying with him? You're the one that gets to choose, who you are with and who you're not with, and leave his ass. You know what I mean? So she tells him he can help her, and she says she had a dream that their son is captured, and while her and her children survived, she's having these recurring nightmares that the swiftest of lizards will be captured and then be forced to fight, be abused, forced to fight, and then die in battle. And she's scared, and she's asked Ian if he will take him to live with them. And she says, if your wife is willing to have him at her fire. And it just, you could see Rachael is so touched, like she's giving her choice in it, which is meaningful to Rachael. And Ian can't believe it. Ian played that whole thing like, you want me to keep him? You want me to take him? Like, he's like, if you would, and if your wife is willing. And of course, Rachael, good-hearted that she is like, of course. And he's so cute. And he has a little cute ass puppy that was adorable. He comes over, where's my brother? He comes in. This puppy is yours, brother. It was so cute. And she tells him it's Rollo's grandson. And so now Ian and Rachael go home with a new kid and Rollo's grand dog. Ian asks Emily if she's sure, and will she and her daughter remain safe? And Rachael says, he will always be your son, but I am honored that he will be mine as well. Rachael was just so sweet in it. Then she comes over and she names the son. That happened in the book. And you can see kind of they're like, okay. And she says, your name is Hunter. And I love Rachael says, you must be led by the spirit, because she's unknowingly used her maiden name. So it's all just beautiful. And then as they leave, he turns around to Rachael and he tells her that he loves her in Mohawk. Very nice. She just showed such raw emotion. I thought that Izzy was stellar in this episode. And I was just very teary with this whole scene. It was so good. Okay, so that was that. I'm going to stop here real quick and take a look at the board because I haven't stopped yet before I do the last two. Okay. The white flowers. Yeah, the white flowers were for peace instead of painting her face white. Lillian says it would have been weird for her to paint her face in a house that was very Western culture centered. Yeah, it would have been weird because they're not like, it was a different situation. And I think visually it would have looked odd. I love that Emily gave Rachael agency in that moment. Yeah, and I thought that was really good. It's like you felt like these women understood that each other were not, yeah, while there's some natural jealousy that, on Emily's part, because this is a woman replacing her basically. And she did love, it wasn't her decision. She did love Ian. And now she's giving this woman her son to raise. It's letting Rachel know also this woman was a good woman, and Ian wouldn't have been with her if she wasn't. And she's not this monster of his past. And so you kind of see them have a rapport. You almost get the sense like if she ever wanted to come visit him, she'd be more than welcome. She'd have no problem with that. Donna says, even though I knew what the name would be, I got chills seeing it played out. I know. It was so good. And the thing is, honestly, like that part got a little weedy in the book. And this kind of putting it all together, like in this episode, it felt okay. I enjoyed it more, I feel like, than I did in the book because it was very complex and it kind of felt like we were so far away from everything for so long with that story. It got into stuff that you didn't really care much about in parts of it. So I thought this was good. It kind of got all the emotion elements of it packed in, and I liked it. Okay, so now we get to William Ben Denny storyline. This whole thing play out. It was very much verbatim to the book in almost every way. And William has just punched him in the face. And he's sitting there going, I guess I deserve that. And William is just so fuming. And he just like goes over and he's like, so what was it then? Rank? And he picks up the papers, this General Ralph Bleecker, and he says, that's Reef. And you know what I gotta say? He had very Book Hal vibes in this. I felt like looking at him and the way he was acting and the way that he spoke and the attitude that he had, he was Hal's son. He had that same kind of way Hal is almost and it's probably because he grew up expecting to be the heir and the Duke and he was raised to be that. But he's very much had that same vibe that you get from Book Hal. It's just like not shaken by much, not rattled easily by all this, like William getting all pissed off. And then he says, think about it, Willie, which was a taunt in the book, but they didn't say it that way in the show. He says, think about it, Willie. It would probably kill my father if he knew that I did this. It was easier for him to think that I'm dead because it would have killed him to see me do that. Or he says he would have killed you. Now that ties right back into him saying it. Remember that conversation that happened in the end of season 7 once you didn't get used to it episode? And it opens with a Hal and John in his office. And he has gout and all that. In that little open, they talk about that. When a son disappoints me, I don't kill him for it because they were using the analogy of uh, America being England's son, and he has rebelled against his father. And he said, if my son rebelled against me, I wouldn't kill him for it. I would try to, talk to him, basically come to an understanding together. And he says, you kill your son? And he's like, well, I haven't yet, he said. And he's like, and he just looked at him and he goes, no, probably not. So it kind of fits in with that open when you go back and look at it, which I did because I was checking out all of the credits and I was going to different seasons to see what they used for their final shot. So we get all that. And then he says, I even tried to, put up a fake grave, in case anybody came looking. And he says, I came looking. I sat there at night, dug it in mud. And he says, I was thrilled to see that you weren't there, but now maybe I should wish you were there rather than this. And he says, now you're proving my point. Like, this is why I'm not telling my father. You're understanding now what I mean. That's when it hits him about Amaranthus. Like, it hits William, which we don't know what he's done with her, what that sex act was. Still don't know. But whatever it was, it hits him. And he goes, "What about your wife and son?" He said, "Oh, you know then. Like, you know, I got married. That I was hoping that John would take her in." And he's just kind of looking at him. He's like, he says, "It was her idea. This was her idea. You know, she's the one that came up with this, not just for my father or her, but also for Trevor, you know." And you see, William just looks stunned. He says, "I don't believe you," right? And he says, "How could you leave a beautiful woman like Amaranthus?" And that's what gets him curious. Like, why do you care? What does it have to do with you? And then you see the jealousy coming up. And I kind of got again the Hal vibes of him fuming over with Nathan 12 Trees, all of that. So I kind of got that impression in my head that, because, Hal has that temper. And you see him jump up like, yes, do you really want to know what I had to do with her? Who do you think comforted her and helped her grief? Which, hey, she didn't need your comfort and help with her grief because she wasn't grieving. Because she's the one that called her. Don't lose sight of that fact there, William. Get with the program. You know what I mean? This woman was playing you. She was lying to you. Still, again, he's thinking with the wrong head. Anyway, we also got the Thomas Paine thing. We got that whole line and him talking to Thomas Paine. And everything was right from the book. All of that. Common sense. And he called him like you arrogant prick or whatever he called him. It's like, you wiped your excrement all over your family. That's a line from Diana's book as well. So everything was right on par with the book here. They start to get in fisticuffs, beating each other up and stuff. And the soldiers come in, break them up. And Ben says, "Lock him up." And then we get Denny, like he's in there beaten up, sitting there in this little, whatever it is, little half-ass jail cell thing. And he sees Denny come in. And at first he kind of looks happy. And then he says, and this was the humor part of the episode. He comes in and he says, "Take off thy breeches and bend over, please." And William was just looking at him, and he pulls out this thing, and he goes, "I beg your pardon." And the look on William's face was just priceless here. I just loved it. And then he holds up this thing that looks like a combination of a rolling pin and a caulking gun. He holds up this thing, and William's just like this. It was hysterical. It was even better. It was like so funny to see him play out. And he says, basically he's going to give him an enema. And William's like, "My ass is the only part of me that's uninjured and not hurting right now. What are you talking about?" And then he says, "Trust me." And he smiles. And his eyes are like dancing with the mischief. And then he's like looking, I'm like, all right. And so then he says, "Cold water isn't really good for this purpose." He says, "Can you go get me some warm water?" He said, "The sooner I can purge his backside and cleanse his bowels, the better." And you see the soldier kind of like, "Okay, I don't want to hear this. La, 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 la." La, 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 I don't want to hear anymore, please. And so William kind of laughs as the soldier runs off. William says, he left the door open. Should I make a run for it? And he says, "No, I'm going to tell him that you have smallpox and I'll put you on the outside of the camp. And then you can just like die conveniently." Because I think you look really, really bad off. And like you see William smile at him. And he says, "I hope when we're on the other side of this, we can get back together again." And he says, "I do too," whatever. And it was just this really nice scene. And I definitely want to see Denny end up at the Ridge in the last episode. I hope we see that back with his family. Maybe it'll be like post the war or something. I'm hoping that is what happens. Diana says, "Remember I told you in the beginning that I had a Diana Deet as well that kind of makes me think she's not going to end up making Amaranthus the one or anything." Somebody said, this is also from Facebook, this is what she's answering. "I love everything about episode 806 except William showing his jealous side. So Ben's wife knew that he was alive. Why would she want to marry William when her husband is still alive and walking this earth?" Which this woman's clearly not getting everything that's happening here. But anyway, Diana says, well, if you read the books, and I don't know how they may handle the rest of the story in the show, Amaranthus is playing a deeper game than may appear. Dot dot dot. So she definitely has another axe to fall with her in the final book. And I really do think she's part of the time traveler plot or something, or working with, in the book I'm talking about, Nathaniel 12 Trees or Richard 12 Trees, I mean, and so forth. I think there's either something going on. Okay. And so that's the end of that one. What do you guys think of the whole William Ben bit? We got, William getting mercy through Denny. And I just love Denny in this. Anything Denny is great. You know what I mean? I just want more. I hope that his is not the last time we see him in the season. We better get him by the end. He needs to come to the Ridge, or he needs to reconnect with his sister. So it was really great. I loved it. Those two were so funny. William could have said, "I've had carnal knowledge of your wife." I think he said enough. He was already getting locked up as a traitor and an infiltrator, which means he probably would have been hung. I'm surprised that, I'm surprised that Ben would let it go that far. I'm hoping that he would have been like William when he had Ian taken off and then went back and eventually got him out. Gotta take care of your people. My daughter is shipping them. Shipping who? Oh, who is she shipping? Denny and William? Is that what you mean? Or is she shipping Amaranthus and William? I'm not sure. Terry says, I honestly love everything to do with Williams. Charles is so good in this role, and I love Joey as Denny. Their scene was so fun. You know what? Charles is really having a great season. He is kind of the sleeper. Everybody's not really paying attention as much to him and his story because they want to know what's happening with the Ridge, and they want to know, you know what I mean? But I think that William is really come into his own with this character this season. He's very comfortable in this role, and I think he has a lot of great expression. I'm really loving him this season in this whole role that he has. So Roger and Bree, so Roger's cleaning up, and Bree is reading this letter and is at first upset by what she's reading. And I do need to say something about this because this is another thing that I have seen negative commentary about. I listened to a podcast last night, and they were talking on 805 and was kind of upset about Roger writing the letter. And she thought that he wasn't urgent enough in the letter. He didn't make any attempt to get it to somebody to deliver it to her and all this stuff. He didn't say, come get me. I'm being trapped into this war. And I thought this was obvious. But if they are not getting what the letter was about, maybe some of you don't, I don't know. But just so you know, that note was not meant to actually be sent to Bree. Okay, that is his final words, his final message to her. And soldiers would write these letters and keep them on their person. And then if they died in battle and they took their bodies, there would be a letter or a note that could be given to their loved one. That wasn't meant to be delivered to Bree, and it wasn't meant to be an urgent him freaking out thing. It was meant to be his final thing to her in case he doesn't make it out of this battle. It would be found on his body and given to her. That's what that note's about, just so you know. That's a normal thing that they do, or at least in the older days they did. Now they do FaceTime and crap. Now it's a whole different ball game. But back then, that was a thing. They would go into a dangerous thing and they keep something on their body so when it was recovered, it could be a last thing given to their loved one or their wife or whoever. And that was why she was upset reading it, because reading that letter let her know he didn't know he was going to make it out of there. He knew he'd have a good chance of not getting out of that alive, and he did it anyway. And she was like, what is this that I'm reading here? She was freaking out about it because it was so resolved. That's what made her freak out about it. And so he's very happy to be alive, and he starts to try to talk to her. And the way Roger was in the scene, so poignant, so almost like, we know how in the book Brianna talks about how he has this light that kind of beams out of him now when he talks. He has almost like this fire that's coming out from inside of him, and this passion and this poignancy. You could see that in this scene. He was you could see the inner wonder of him, like something seriously moved in his life. I thought this was really well done. And really well done. I really liked it. And he explains to her, and he's ready to become an ordained minister. And she says, "Are you sure you have been having so many doubts about this?" And she says, "But this is what happened." And he starts to tell her about this vision he saw. I was so glad that this was included because I was worried after last episode that that was it. And we were just supposed to figure it out. And I was saying, I hope that there's a conversation. So I'm glad there was a conversation. So he says to Bree, he had a flash when he was thrown back. And when she said, "I really don't want to hear how close you came to death." And he says, "I understand, but I do need to talk to you about this." It's kind of like that thing where it's not real until I tell my wife or the person I love that this information, and then it becomes more solid for him as well, And I think it was that type of a thing. And he said, when I was thrown back in this explosion, he says, I remembered being in another situation like that, a brief flash. He said, it was when my mother died. He says, I always wondered how I survived that because I should have died. He says, my mother threw me and my father caught me. No wonder in his face, the way he said it was so good. He says, he caught me. I have no idea how he could have been there. He says, but I sent him back. He came back and he saved me. And that's when he starts to have this realization and explain to her that we weren't ever changing God's plan. We were always part of God's plan. Our coming back was always part of the plan. We were already there, and you could see him kind of coming around to it. It's telling the audience like how time travel works, basically, because through his understanding. Brianna just kind of smile and see how it's affecting him. And so he says, and now I don't have to feel that constraint because I realize we're not changing God's plan with what we're doing. And I can feel like, okay, basically, and know that I'm meant to do this and I'm meant to do it here. And I think this is significant as well. It's like a very concrete idea of what he's meant to do and that he's supposed to be in this time period doing it. And I think that they conceive Davy in that sex that they have. And in that, they are basically conceiving a child that can't time travel once he comes to understanding of what his calling is and that they're meant to be there permanently. Then that he's blessed with this child, basically in their celebration of that. So I thought it was all beautiful. I liked also how he talked about how the feeling of being blown back in the explosion felt like time travel and the way it feels on your body, which I was glad they included because I always am feeling like they don't do that enough on the show. Talk about how dangerous it is. So I was glad he gave a description in that way through him. So there's a lot of little things that happened with that scene that I thought was really well done. And so the Mobius twist comes full circle here. Okay, so we get that. So we got the Mobius twist for Roger. We got his understanding for his calling. We got his purpose. We got the Davy conception that happened. We have Brianna seeing that he really means it and the light in him for it and all that stuff. He says we were always a part of history, Brie, even if we didn't know it yet. We didn't change God's plan. We were always part of it. And it's just beautiful. He says, I saved my father, and when I sent him through the stones, he saved me. So I said here, complaints on this, the love scene. This Roger in this scene felt the most like book Roger to me. He finally felt like the Roger I know in the way that he was talking. I've seen a lot of complaints that said this major revelation about God and obviously makes the couple horny. What's up with that? Then somebody else I saw said, like basically he climaxed and it didn't look like she did, so I guess he's serving God, so he's not going to serve her anymore. I heard all this negative shit I saw, and I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with you? I just get so aggravated. It's Roger, burning off of all of this stuff that he accumulated in this battle. Jamie always, this is something we've been trained to know through Outlander, that after a battle, men want to have sex. They have to burn off that testosterone that's built up. And then on top of that, he's had all of this internal revelation. So it makes sense to me. He's reclaiming life in the aftermath of seeing so much death in the battlefield. And I thought it was very erotic. I thought it was a very erotic scene. And I didn't see it as checking a box. People were like, they just wanted to check the box if Roger and Bree have sex. I didn't take it that way at all. Maybe it's just me, but I didn't take it that way at all. So I wanted to read this little teeny end of chapter 99. I know this is a longer thing than I'm supposed to be doing. I'm almost done. This is the end of chapter 99. I'm just explaining this to you because it was intimated as well in the book that she was going to have sex with Roger at the end of the chapter. Okay. This was her by herself, Brianna, reading the letter. And it says something had called to him and he'd gone to do it. And he had, thank God, come back to her, come in need of her. She blew out a long, slow breath and rising went to slide the Bible back into place. Whom shall I send and who will go for us? She says, well, there's a rhetorical question. She said, there isn't anybody else who can do that for him, is there? Meaning, physically. She took a breath and clean air from the sea came in through the open window and she said, send me. And that's basically her understanding he has a physical need for her. And then she says, send me. And you're supposed to assume they go off and have sex and that after she says that, because she's talking about that. So I don't know why people are having a major attitude about it. So after that, they come in, we get another scene with Marsley and Fergus and little Henri Christian playing with his little frog, Pierre. And we get the whole, there's only one frog in the house because they used to call the dwarves Petit Grand Oui or whatever it is that means little frogs. And we get a shot with them a little bit with Fergus and everything, that family, because they're, of course, going to have a big part in the next episode. So it kind of retouches base with them. And we find out that Roger, because of his bravery on the battlefield, when they were poo-pooing on Jamie, it's like Roger's moment, you know what I mean? They were poo-pooing on Jamie. Jamie wasn't going to get shit, you know what I mean? Because of what he did, apparently, and it pissed them all, everybody off. But because of Roger and how valiantly he operated on the field and how he was there for all the soldiers, it convinced Marion that even if he doesn't have faith in Jamie per se, he does in Roger, so he'll go ahead and get the guns for him. And I said, go Roger, go Roger. So I was kind of glad. Maybe that's why people were pissed too, because Roger got a good mark there, you know. I got a couple good pieces of feedback. Terry said, love this episode and the theme of powerful wise women running throughout. Jamie and Joseph Brandt's wife say almost exactly the same thing about men being wise to listen to their women. The whole thing showed how a matriarchy is built on support and knowing it takes a village to thrive. Everyone's acting was so good, but I want to highlight Izzy's as superb. The whole time they were journeying, you could almost see Rachael becoming more and more haggard with worry the closer they got to their destination. You really did see that too. And then when she is finally face to face with Emily and she agrees to take Totus into her family and love him as their own son without hesitation, it was beautiful. I think that theme, which runs throughout the books, is what I love about these characters so much. Rollo's grandson, so adorable. Claire and Elspeth, and she has a little cry space. Claire doesn't really have a female friend who is not a relative, does she? I know, it's kind of sad. And it kind of hit me when the Ridge women were gathered together outside after Jamie gave them tenancy, and Claire was apart from them and watching them all talk together. Little Henri Christian, such a sweetie with his frog prince. I'm already in despair for next week's episode. So one of the things I wanted to say that I meant to say, and I guess I forgot, with the Ridge thing and the women out there, it was another little thing of how you saw the women in the front, in the foreground, the men are behind them. And when they're out there talking, and you see the women talking amongst themselves, making their plans. And the men kind of sit there like, I guess we ain't got shit to say and just hope we get a meal once in a while. So I thought that was a riot. So that was Terry. I thought that was a great comment, so I wanted to share. Salima said, just some quick thoughts after my first watch, yet another very good episode. Particular highlights for me were the Ian, Rachael, Emily scenes. I like the way they did this. It was a great adaptation choice. Number 2, Claire and Elspeth saying goodbye. 2 strong and capable women in different circumstances could have been great friends. 3, Ben and William's fight. The actor playing Ben reminds me a little of Sam Hoare, so it's good casting in my opinion. Sam Hoare plays Hal. Number 4, the humor in Denny's helping William escape. They're doing the humor so much better this season. I so agree, Salima. It's been one of the best things about this season is all of the inclusion of Diana's humor. And I think it's because they're using a lot of book dialogue. Of course, that lends to that. Number 5, Roger explaining to Bree why he is ready to be ordained. This felt like more genuine Roger to me. I agree. I'm sure after repeat watches, I will have more to add to the list. The next 4 eps are going to be epic. I 100% agree with that. Phyllis says, after watching last night for the first time, I felt so much was so fantastic. I thought it was so satisfying in so many ways. Izzy was so wonderful with her face acting, was phenomenal. I could see her worry, her growing jealousy, her apprehension creeping in. Loved all the women. Makes me remember how my husband would ask the kids, who's the boss? And they would yell, Mommy. And Mel would say, right, girls. Glad Cunningham is on his way. The Ben and Williams scene was very telling. Ooh, that Amaranthus, more like the woman I disliked in the book. Loved Bree and Roger and his memories of his father and his part in sending him back through the stones. Could Davy be far behind? This one episode I need to repeat. I loved it all. It was over way too soon. Oh, I forgot to mention Rollo's grandson and Rachael graciously taking Ian's son. Going forward, this could be very interesting. We have 2 kids who experienced the 20th century, a girl who grew up in a brothel, and now a boy who grew up in the ways of the native culture. Like, you got a blend going on the bridge. So all of those were really great comments. I love reading your comments, so please include them, keep including them and commenting on the feedback thread. If you're watching this on YouTube, comment below some thoughts. Okay, so the future episode. I talked to you about most of this already, so I'll just kind of hit it a little real quick. In the first trailer where you hear Mrs. Fraser and you see Claire turn in that blue quilty jacket, and Claire says in VO, is it possible? And they show her face surprised. I think we're going to get that in the next episode. I think a big chunk of the storyline of Faith will be delivered in the next episode. And I explained to you why with the whole things about Tony. We see a little bit of Mac Mojo with Jamie waking up from a dream and saying something's wrong. So we get that little bit. So I think they're going to really nod into some of this, for lack of a better word, supernatural. But you know what I mean, like the mojo stuff, the woo-woo stuff, the sensory things, and all of that. The kismet of it all. We get the market scene, which I didn't think we were going to probably get, but apparently we are, where Marcelly and Bree go to the market and get harassed by the men. I love stuff that shows Marcelly and Bree together and things like that. I'm hoping maybe that means we're going to get Fergus and Roger together as well. We also got a little glimpse of William coming and telling John and Amaranthus what he knows, because you see John look troubled, like oh my God, look on his face. And you see Amaranthus get pissed and throw her glass down. I was like, yeah, bitch, everybody knows what you did. I have one more little, remember I told you earlier that there was a thing that Diana said that basically said that there is no faith in the end of the season. Here's what that's about. She's responding to this comment. I love tonight's episode, even though I read the books and knew it was going to happen with Ian and his son and Rollo's grandson. I still cried. The season is getting better with each episode, and next week is written by Tony. She has written some excellent episodes, including Faith and one of my favorites, The Devil's Mark. I know it's going to be excellent, but also heartbreaking. Looking forward to Ron's episode, and of course yours. I'm a little nervous about the final episode. Since Matt wrote it, I hope it doesn't mean the Faith lived nonsense gets dragged to the end. Diana said, no, I co-wrote the last scene with Matt. And unless they messed with it after I last saw it, there's nothing whatever about Faith, etc. in it. I did write 809, but they did also mess with it a little after, inserting a sappy line by Claire, for instance, and removing what I thought was a very moving exchange between Jamie and John. But them's the breaks, she said. So I get the impression that it all is going to be pretty much explained in this next episode. So that's what I'm thinking. Let me see if you guys have anything else to say, and then I will say adieu to you and you and you. Where do you see all these negative comments? Just like on Diana's thread, I saw comments on just some groups of people that come into my feed and just kind of getting a pulse of the people. I don't see it as much in my group. a couple people maybe, but not much because we have a more positive vibe than a lot of places. But I've seen it when I was looking at the Lit Forum to see anything that Diana might have said about the episode. They were, of course, they're very harsh, the Lit Forum. Here and there, like as I bip around on sites, we are more positive than most in a lot of places are, believe it or not. Just in general, like we give a little more grace than some people that have read the books give the show. And it took me a while. Like I didn't give them grace when they don't deserve grace, but I do understand that certain things have to be adapted, and that's what you have to do, you know. And I'm kind of in the mindset of I want to enjoy this final season. I don't want to consume myself with negativity, with bitching, with all, you know, not that I won't say if something I didn't like. I thought the thing with the fingernails, I was shocked that they let that go through like that because it was very clear. Maybe because I have a big TV, it was very clear to me because they were face to face and her hands were like this on his face. So you saw her hands right against his face very clearly. Like the house did not match the interior. They only would have one or two windows on the front of each side of the house when you looked at it from the outside. But then on the inside, you had this long room and a huge parlor with all these windows across that didn't have windows on the outside of the house to match it. So I thought that was a boo boo. So like I will say if things are a boo boo, or if they handled something a different little way that I think gives the wrong idea or something like that, you know, I will say it. But I'm not going to dwell on the space thing or dwell on something like and let it consume me for the whole rest of the season. I want to enjoy the season, and that's just how I feel. That's my attitude this last season. If that makes me a sappy person or whatever, you know, so be it. I just don't want to because there's enough negativity around right now. Like I want to enjoy this and have this be my happy place. You know what I mean? We only got 4 more episodes of this show that we have watched for 101 episodes when all is said and done. So I want to enjoy them. So that's my take on it anyway. But this has been a very long show. So I will say adieu to you and you and you. Much love to all and have a good night. Bye.